Hey guys, it's Mr. Mini Painter here, and today I am painting the Great Beast of Gorgoroth. This will be a three-part video, and in this video, the first one, I'm going to focus on the beast itself. As you can see here, I spray painted it with some dark gray first, and then did a zenithal highlight of lighter gray as a primer. And I already covered the base with some modeling sand. You can choose to do it afterwards, but I find it easier because you can coat it immediately, so you don't accidentally hit your nicely painted model afterwards. So the first part is very easy. I used a Mechanicus standard gray to paint the entirety of the animal. You can thin it down just a little bit if you want, but make sure you get a nice coverage because it's a big model and you don't want any spots untouched. So take your time and give it a nice dark base coat. As I'm filming this video, this is, I think, is one of the retired models by Games Workshop, which is a shame because it's a nice and big model, which looks amazing on your battlefield. It comes with, I think it's 10 orcs to put on top, and it's a great unit, just to be honest. So the second step I did was take a large dry brush and use Mechanicus standard gray mixed with some administratum gray as a first highlight stage. You can go about this stage fairly roughly and just touch it here and there. I focused on of course, as always with a highlight, you focused on the raised areas, on the parts that stand out. But with this size of model, it's quite easy to pick out these areas. For example, the knees, the joints, the hips, the tail, the back, etc. And I used some extra focus on the face. I went a little off camera here, but you get the idea. Make sure to wipe off most of the paint when dry brushing. If you don't, you're just going to paint it in a lighter color, and that's not what you want. You want to keep seeing those dark recesses and apply some highlights over them, so you get a nice contrast. So make sure to wipe off most of that paint of the brush. I used a paper towel to do so. And afterwards, I just took pure administratum gray, or any other light gray if you want, and touched those top parts of the beast. So the cheeks here, the ear, the neck. So you get some, well, you can see it already starting to get together quite nicely here. The top of the legs, basically any part where the sun would shine, or at least where the light would hit the skin is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, it takes quite some time, but don't be hasty, Mr. Mariadoc. You want to do it nice, so use as little paint as possible, wipe most of it off, and just keep brushing, make some circular movements. You get something like this, which already looks quite impressive. Now, to add some color, I added some storm vermin fur. At first I think I went a little bit too dark because storm vermin fur is a darker color than the administratum gray I applied before. So I think you better should mix the storm vermin fur with some administratum gray, if I'm quite honest. But I think in the end I got a quite nice result, because this way I get some color differentiation in the grays, because it's a big pile of gray, isn't it? Next I used apothecary white as a sort of shader, and I focused on the bottom part of the model here. So you can see here the crevices in the neck. I added some apothecary white to create some nice transition. And apothecary white is a gray tone, but it has a little bit of blue in it, which I like because it also adds an extra color to the palette of this mainly gray model. Next I used Rakarth Flesh for the big horn on top. Make sure not to touch his face as you're doing so. This is one of the main, one of the focus areas of your beast is his head with the huge horn. Once you let that dry, make sure to absolutely let it dry. Use some null oil to get those nice shades in the recesses of the horn. It has some nice rims in it, and we want to show them. The problem with shades and oils is that they tend to flow downwards, which is logical, of course. So what I did is let it dry upside down for a while as well. So I applied 2 coats of non-oil. For the chains I used lead belcher. It's quite a tedious job, and you have to be extra careful, because if you go about it very quick, you're gonna hit the skin, and you don't want that. So I took my time. I think this took me about maybe 15 minutes to actually touch all of them, but the result is worth it. And that's it for now. It looks quite nice already, doesn't it? Next, I applied some extra Administratum Grey with a fine detail brush and pick out some lines on the face and highlight them. So the top of the eyelids, top of the ears, top of the cheeks, etc. You get some nice definition to this face, and this is for the animal. This is the key part of his being, right? It's going to be the Hodau on top, the orcs on top. So the one thing that's going to stand out is the big horned head of this animal. So give it as much attention as you possibly can. For the next part, the eyes, I took some palette witch flesh. With this model, the eyes are quite big, so it's not that difficult. Please try and keep some of the darker lines around the eye, so don't cover the entire eyeball, because that way it will stand out just a little bit more. You get some shade, some darker recesses behind it, which makes the eye look extra nice. I added a pupil with Corvus black. You can use any kind of black, but I like the Corvus black with this one because it's a bit glazy. He's got that, I wanted to give him a kind of a friendly look, because he's such an enormous, dangerous looking creature. And this way it looks like he's, well, somehow being torn into battle or of sorts. I used null oil to shade the chains on this beast. And again, take your time, don't spill the oil all over the body, and try and focus, stay with the chains. Next, I painted the hooves with Mechanicus Standard Grey, because mine were not really nicely covered while spray painting it. So as a base coat, I gave him some nice dark gray look. And next, while I let that dry, I'm focusing on the tail, and took some ashen gray to paint those hairs on the side. I think I previously touched the tip of the tail with some null oil, or maybe Black Templar or something like that. As the last part, I highlighted the tips of the tail with Administratum Grey to give it a nice little extra edge. Now for the mouth, I used Bergner Burgundy as a base coat, which is a nice deep purple coat. Make sure to touch the tongue, basically everything inside his mouth. So the tongue, the gums, the top of the inside of the mouth, etc. It's the only bit of color besides the gray that we're going to use. So I highlighted it with some Screamer pink. You can use any bright kind of pink or purple if you have it. Or basically use some palette witch flesh to highlight your previous color if you want. For the teeth, I used Karak stone. And if you want, you can highlight it further with some Sharpty bone or something like this, or add some palette witch flesh. I kept them fairly dark, to be honest. Next, I took Nuln Oil and covered the entire hooves with this to get some nice shading in the cracks and the separation of the toes. And while I let that dry, I focused on the quivers. I used Rhinox hide for one, and because I wanted to have a different color on the other one, I took some other brown for that. Now this is a very nice detail on this model, which is going to look very nice with the Hoda placed on top afterwards, because it's going to come together quite nicely. The other one I used dried bark on, just to have a different color next to it. You can use any kind of other brown if you want, like a Thondia brown, or mix some Rhinox with something else. Use maybe Mornfang if you want to keep it bright. I liked mine to be very dark because I want the orcs to have a dark set of equipment, and which we're going to see in the arrows later on. I also chose to keep the arrows quite dark. I used some black feathers to make them look more menacing. As for example, with elves you would use a brighter tone. As you can see here, I'm using Black Templar, which is a contrast paint on the feathers of the arrows. So some black feathers there, and Black Templar has a nice shining through contrast paint. For the wooden part, I used some snakebite leather, and the left quiver has some holes, some openings in there through which you can see the arrows, so I touched it with some snakebite leather as well. And now we're coming to the last details. I used Storm Vermin fur on the hooves to give them some extra color, and I focused on the bottom part of the hoof. So the top part I left quite dark, and the bottom I touched with this Storm Vermin fur. I used a very small dry brush to do so. Now for the base, I touched that with, I spray painted it black, and I'm touching it with some Baneblade brown now. You can build it up as much as you want. And after this, I'm using some Sharpty bone. I did not film the rest of this process, but what I did was also add some contrast paint and re-highlight it with the same colors afterwards, which creates a little bit nice darker look. And for that, I think I used a dark brown contrast paint. And here's the result. Looking very nice, this Great Beast of Gorgoroth. I hope to see you in the next video where we're going to paint the Hoda. So thank you for watching, and bye bye!